Holy Gospel according to Luke, the 12th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said, "Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. Make purses for yourselves that do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near, no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Be dressed for action, and have your lamps lit. Be like those who are waiting for their master to return from the wedding banquet, so that they may open the door for him as soon as he comes and knocks. Blessed are those slaves whom the master finds alert when he comes. Truly I tell you, he will fasten his belt and have them sit down to eat, and he will come and serve them. If he comes during the middle of the night or near dawn and finds them so, blessed are those slaves. But know this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour." This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Christ.
Please be seated. God bless you today for taking this Sabbath time to sit with God, faithful children of God. In the words of the gospel today, do not be afraid. This is a sanctuary for us to come and to listen to God and to share our faith and to listen to one another. There sure are a lot of voices out there today clamoring for our attention. And some of those voices can be pretty scary. The amount of raw data to process every second of the day can be overwhelming. I read recently that the average person is exposed to 5,000 advertisements a day. 5,000 advertisements a day. And the average American adult sends and receives 32 text messages per day. I know some of you are texting right now. And I get that call from a phone number in Adamstown, Pennsylvania, every day offering a deal for PP&L customers. Right along with that guy that we talked about last week that wants my social security number. And I'm sure from your giggles that you all have these communication issues as well. As we sit here together right now, some of our communication devices are working behind the scenes and they're supplying constant information to those little boxes that are connected to our everyday lives. And they're just waiting for us to open the screen to reveal what it is that they want us to find. So thank you, as I mentioned in the beginning of the service, for taking this hour of this time and for focusing on the foundation of our faith, Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. What a gift we have to be given the promises of God and to be reminded of those promises today in word and in sacrament. We will be touching these promises today. Hebrews 11, that Peg so faithfully read for us this day, has always been one of my favorite chapters in the Bible. As a child growing up in the Christian school environment, I had to memorize this chapter, every verse of this chapter. It's known as the Faith Hall of Fame. I've tried to bring some of the cobwebs out of my head, dust them out, and bring some of this back, the memory part of it. And some of it I can recall. Of course, some of it's in a different language. It's called King James Version language, the these and the thous. For me as a youth, hearing these stories of faith in Sunday school as well. Hebrews 11 served as a New Testament recap of those Old Testament stories. Before the widespread usage of digital technology, remember those flannel graphs that we used to use? How many teachers used flannel graphs as you were teaching? Absolutely. Yes. I could visualize those flannel graph characters up there on the board, and each major step in the story, they would put a person into the story, take the person away, and how the characters were sort of superheroes from God. That little shepherd boy, David, would have that slingshot whirling over his head, and he'd get more and more ambitious. He came out from the field, he would go across the battlefield with that slingshot. He would get closer and closer. The teacher would move him closer and closer to Goliath. That stone would come out closer and closer and closer to Goliath, and it would hit him in the forehead every time. The theme of each story was, if you trust God and have enough faith, you too can be a Christian superhero too. And as a child sitting in the seat, I was always inspired, and I longed for the day when God would call me to be a Moses and command that Red Sea to split wide open, or to create and lead a whole nation of Robin Feros like Abraham and Sarah did, as many as the stars. That future seemed so far away, sitting there in that seat. And there would be plenty of desert days ahead in the travel. And some days were very scary. For the most part, I can recall my major fears as a youth. Not so sure about all of the minor ones, but they were real. And they were in real time in my life, and in the time and the setting in which I lived. I can't imagine as an adult what fears there are today in the everyday lives of our nation's youth. Jesus was speaking to an intergenerational group of first century people who faced the pressures of their day. The writer of Luke gives us that familiar fear not message that the Gospel of Luke gives us. Jesus calls those gathered little flock, those who were gathered, he calls them little flock. It gives God pleasure to give you the kingdom, was Jesus' answer to those who feared in that day. I wonder what those fearful folks amidst the oppression of the Roman Empire thought about their future as they sat in their seats. I wonder if they felt helpless and useless, hopeless and less than human in their current state. I wonder how Abraham and Sarah felt in their situation. They were not able to have children. They were pushing 100 years old. All hope of having an heir with their blood in their veins was lost. They were faced with the impossibility. God came to Abraham and said, I am going to make the impossible possible. And God didn't just stop there in the miracle of the upcoming year. God showed Abraham the stars in the sky. And he said, my promise to you is as big as the night sky. The sky is the limit. And Hebrews recaps for us in the larger picture that Abraham believed God. Faith is about not having to know all the details of the future, not having to have a name for every one of those stars up there, but in trusting the one who gives the promise. Hebrews tells us that bluntly, that Abraham believed in the one who gave the promise. When God showed that big sky to Abraham, he was showing him that the promise he was giving to him was from well before human time ever began. What God offers is in God's hands, and we can count on it, even when we can't see the next step ahead in the future. My little flock, do not be afraid. It's the Father's pleasure to give you the kingdom. Our future is in God's hands. As an adult, I have fears that I never considered as a child. As I age and have had a change in health status, I have fears that weren't on the radar 2 years ago. In the 4 years of formal preparation to become a pastor, I didn't anticipate some fears I now have as an ordained minister of word and sacrament. This world has changed. This world has gone nuts, especially in the last week. What has happened to this world? Politics is probably just as dirty as it always has been. But it has that megaphone of all those voices that I mentioned earlier. Everyone has an opinion. And because communication is so fast and in real time, those opinions get aired immediately. And they are immediate, without any hesitation and without any thought about how their words may affect others. We have lost the art of public debate. Let me say that again. We have lost the art of public debate and respect for each other, to actually have another opinion. In an exchange of opposing ideas, the louder or more crude speaker seems to win. It seems to be a schoolyard bully fight. We've become so politically polarized that no word or phrase is considered to be independent of one's political ideal. If you choose the wrong word in a sentence, you are immediately labeled and thrown into either a Republican or Democratic camp, and you're emblazoned with a radical, condescending buzzword across your forehead. Try being a pastor these days. I have to watch every single word and syllable that I use, lest I be thrown into one aisle or another. People are wounded and they're slaughtered on the opinion battlefield in this hail of verbal bullets, and eventually precious, living, breathing human beings are slaughtered in the mouth. The value of human life is being diminished. The general population of the U.S. is experiencing something that other countries have experienced for decades. The reality of having to have an escape plan when you shop at Walmart. Let me say that again. We have not had to have this in the recent past in this country like other countries have experienced. We have to have an escape plan if violence breaks out when we are shopping. Amidst this war, people can feel helpless and useless and hopeless. In the sea of chatter out there, one can feel that they have no voice, that they are not heard. But remove that clutter of misunderstanding. Lift that fog of irresponsible conversation. Place those heavy fears that we have on the back of that man who is headed to the cross of Calvary. And you will find shining brightly up there, above all the chaos, the stars that God has promised us. When God offers a promise, and what God offers is in God's hands, and we can count on it. Even when we can't see the next step ahead in the future, there is hope in God. Do not feel hopeless. Jesus tells us to be ready, to have those candles lit, and to be waiting at the door. God is rich in mercy and grace and blessings. We need to be ready, and we need to be looking for that gift at the door. God is faithful. My little flock, do not be afraid. It's the Father's pleasure to give you the kingdom. Our future is in God's hands. Thanks be to our faithful God.